Today's video is going to feature 3 clocks made by Bomartan Limited. You can see right away what makes these clocks interesting. The electronics are embedded in clear acrylic resin, allowing you to see the works. It says, "Made in England by Bomartan Limited, 0 joules." It is funny how even digital clocks were required to list the number of joules they used in their movement. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a digital clock that uses any joules in its movement. That would be quite strange. And this one says the same thing. This adapter here is homemade. I'll get into that in a bit. Since I've got this round one plugged in, I'll demonstrate that first. You'll notice that there's no buttons on these things, but there are these little metal things protruding up to the surface of the acrylic. Those are the controls, and in this one they're actually labeled, which is nice. So this button here is the set button, puts it into set mode. When I touch that, it'll stop counting. And then this button here is the hours button. Touching that will increment the hours. You can also hold it down. And then touching this pair of contacts here will increment the minutes. And lastly, touching these contacts here will start the clock running once again. That's a little PM indicator light there in the corner. Not really necessary on a 12-hour clock, honestly, but I don't mind it being there. There's another pair of contacts on the bottom here. I'm not sure what, if anything, they do. Next is the most valuable one of all, because it appeals to another set of collectors besides just clock collectors. I put this unusual looking adapter here together for this clock, so I'm just going to transfer it over. Generally a good idea to unplug the adapter first before removing these pins so you don't short them together. I'll just be careful about that. These pins are from an original adapter. The adapter for this clock here was burned out. I had to substitute my own. Now it's already in set mode. Let me just stop that advancing. I'll show you the controls on this one. To get into set mode, you touch the side contact and then this contact here in the corner. And then to advance the hours, you still touch the side contact and then touch the top one there. Now you'll notice it just starts advancing until you press the set button again, unlike the other one, which advanced once per press. Similarly, once you touch the contact here, the minutes will start advancing until you, again, stop that with the set button. Now, this contact here is connected to this one here, so this one also serves as the set button. And finally, this last contact on the side here is the start contact, so you just touch this one, and the clock will start running. And now you see why this clock is the most valuable one. It displays Coca-Cola alternating with the time, so it also appeals to Coca-Cola memorabilia collectors. I was able to get a fairly good price on this one though, because the adapter was, burned out and they couldn't demonstrate the clock was working. It's got some unfortunate haziness on the top. I think you'd really need to heavily sand down this top to take care of that, or maybe dissolve the top a little bit with some acrylic solvent. Not sure what the best solution is there. That chip there, the SAS 580, is a touch sensor control chip. I believe it was intended for use with televisions and such originally. And it has 4 channels. And then a lot of the circuitry over here is involved in alternating between the Coca-Cola display and the time, along with all those diodes there. Now, to get to the unusual adapter I made here, this resistor here is just to reduce the voltage from the AC adapter a little bit and kind of provide a bit of a soft start. The filter capacitors are embedded in the acrylic. You can see them there and there. They're both 47 microfarads at 16 volts. So they didn't really leave a lot of headroom above the normal operating voltage. Now the button is something special I added. That's to stop the Coca-Cola display. I noticed when testing this thing out that if the voltage to the clock drops below a certain level, the Coca-Cola circuit stops running, but the clock continues running. And if you return the voltage to normal, it'll just keep displaying the time and Coca-Cola won't appear. So basically what this normally close button does is allow you to put another resistor in series with the power connection. So when Coca-Cola pops up on the screen, if I press the button here, it'll jump back to the time. Boom. Basically just caused a little brownout there, and that shut off the Coca-Cola circuit. And you notice that little LED there went out. If I press the button while time is running, it just dims the display a little bit. And if I want to restart the Coca-Cola circuit, I just hit the start button again, that light comes on, and the Coca-Cola display will start going again. I added that feature because the flashing Coca-Cola gets kind of annoying in the corner of my eye, and hopefully that doesn't hurt anything. Now, since these clocks cannot be repaired, they did use slightly higher quality components than usual, particularly in the capacitors department. You notice this clock uses these nice looking green film capacitors there, and the filter capacitors are tantalum capacitors, which have a very long life as long as you don't exceed their voltage rating. The main problem with them is that when they do fail, they tend to fail as a hard short. So that's where this resistor will also come in handy to a degree. It should control the current to this thing, although the resistor may burn up if there's a short. Well, that's better than the transformer or something else burning up. But in the end, the result will be that this clock is unusable. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Lastly, I have this clock that came with the original box. It says Bomartan, and then there's a sticker on here that says OCL4/601 12/US American with power. Since Bomartan was based in England, I assume that they mainly sold clocks for the British market, but I don't know that for sure. And obviously a clock for the British market would need 50 Hertz power and a 220 volt adapter, not a 110 volt adapter. Well, let's take a look inside the box. Now obviously this thing's been used and out of the box probably plenty of times, so I don't know exactly how it was originally packed, but I kind of took my best shot at that. So there's the inner packaging, and then this opens up, and here's your manual in 3 languages. A product guarantee card, which was never filled out. Although someone wrote 16 March 1991 in there. I'm sure that's quite a bit later than this clock was produced. And then inside this inner part is the clock itself and the AC adapter. So here's that final clock. Now, just like the Coca-Cola clock, this one is an advertising clock, but it doesn't display anything special on the readouts. It just has the John Deere logo in the corner here. It says made in England by Bomartan Limited, 0 joules, just like the other ones, and then PRCL2. Perhaps that's the model. I don't know. Unlike the other 2 clocks, the tops of the chips are painted over, so you can't read the part numbers on them. But I believe it uses the same exact clock chip as the other 2, the CK3400. and then either this CD4011CN or the SAS580. Now, unfortunately, as is often the case with things that are, quote, new in open box, this clock has a problem. I've noticed that trend with transistor radios where if something was packed away, basically unused for seemingly no good reason, that reason is sometimes that the item has a problem, such as a factory defect. Now, this one came with its original adapter, and this is the only original adapter I have. It's a Dynamic Instrument Corp 7 volts AC at 410 milliamp adapter, and it was made in the USA, unlike the clock itself. Now, 410 milliamps for an adapter this small is kind of hard to believe, so it doesn't surprise me that this same adapter here burned out when it was used on this clock with the additional displays and circuitry. I'm going to unplug the replacement adapter so you can see that. It's a Comtronics adapter. I got a couple of off of eBay, which outputs 9 volts AC at 500 milliamps. So I had to drop, 2 volts to supply this thing the appropriate voltage. So now I'll plug this last clock in. And like the Coca-Cola clock, it has started off advancing the time before I even touch any of the controls. But if I touch this one contact here on the back and then touch this contact here, it'll go into set mode and stop advancing the time. If while still holding this contact here I touch this one, it'll advance the hours, and hey, there's something wrong there. You'll notice a segment is out. Now I got the datasheet for this clock chip here, the CK3400, and tried to visually look for where the heck the problem might be, and I was able to trace down the path that the signal goes through, but I didn't see any unsoldered connections or anything of the sort. So it's possible that the display itself is bad. If it had just been a solder joint, I was thinking I could maybe drill down to the board and then resolder it, but it doesn't appear that I am so lucky. So this clock is unfortunately just a display piece now, because you can't tell the difference between 5 and 6 o'clock. Now back to the controls. This next one here is the minutes. That works just fine. None of those segments are out. And touching that contact there will also put it back into set and hold mode. These two contacts here are equivalent, so just touching this one or this one here will put it in the set mode and stop the hours or minutes from advancing if they're going. And then to put it back into run mode, you just touch the two contacts on the back, and then that blinking light will come on and the time is now advancing. I think this clock was made a little bit later than the other ones, and I noticed they made one improvement. These 47 microfarad capacitors are now rated at 20 volts, which gives plenty of headroom over the normal operating voltage and should hopefully prevent failures. The round clock has just one filter capacitor, which is rated at 16 volts. The other two have 2 filter capacitors. The CK3400 clock chip is a bit unusual. It's a multiplex design that drives 2 digits at a time. So one set of output lines drives both the tens of hours and the ones of hours, and then another set of output lines drives the tens of minutes and ones of minutes. And if you shake the thing, you can see that flicker there. It doesn't multiplex at a particularly high rate. The displays they use are nice HP made units. 5082-7750, and there's a date code on here of 638, so 38th week of 1976. This one is dated 646, so 46th week of 1976, and then the chip is date coded 7712, so 12th week of 1977. And then this one is dated 7625. on that chip and 607 on that one. The displays are dated 5/35, so 1975. So this one was perhaps made in, mid to late 1976. I of course don't know how fresh the chips were when this clock was built, but it appears that they were all built in the mid to late 1970s. So there's all three of them together. Oh, and these rubber feet are not original here. I just put them on there to stop it from sliding around. It looks like it was used as a hockey puck at one point because it's got a bunch of damage here on the front, a little bit on the top, and the front was very, very scratched. I had to put a good bit of effort into polishing it, and it's still not perfect. But you need like a, belt sander or a milling machine or something to cut down deep enough to get rid of this damage here. There is one thing that's different about the round clock from the other ones, and that's what happens when you first plug it in. It comes up flashing 12 o'clock, like many more modern clocks do, instead of coming up at a random time and then advancing on its own. So this one's a little bit better than the others in that regard, and it is made a little bit later. But yeah, once you touch the set control, the flashing stops, and then you can set the hours and minutes, and then run the clock. It's a little bit easier to set than the others, so that's an improvement. Interestingly, the part number of the clock chip is the same as the one used in the Coca-Cola clock, though. And the back is unpolished. You can see how scratched that is. I might polish that. We'll see. Thanks for watching.